Well, as you heard there, authorities are trying to prepare for the unpredictable. Multiple police forces and security agencies have to coordinate in a situation like this. Marco Mendicino is the Minister of Public Safety. He's in Toronto. Minister Mendicino, glad to have you back on Power and Politics.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Minister, given what is unfolding right now in the capital, what are you and your ministry doing to make sure the capital and people in it are safe?
Well, I think it's very important for everyone to know that from the standpoint of public safety, police at all levels are coordinating and are in constant communication. They're monitoring the situation very, very carefully, and they're going to respond as the circumstances will dictate. And of course, those decisions will be taken independently by police and other partners within the public safety sphere. And look, I'll just say, I get that some people are asking, where do we draw the lines between free speech and conduct that represents to public safety? I think we can draw some bright lines around those who are wantonly spreading lies and hate. We've already seen people who are equating vaccine mandates to an ushering in of a new era like Nazi Germany. We're seeing the flying of Confederate flags, and we're seeing, frankly, some organizers incite others to overthrow the government through violence. And frankly, there's just too much of that from the leaders of this convoy, which is not about freedom, and it's certainly not about truckers. And I know that, and I think we all know that, because truckers have put some significant distance between themselves and this convoy. And that's because they, like the majority of Canadians, understand that the way that we're going to get back to normal is through vaccines. So in the meantime, we'll work closely with all partners in public safety, and we'll continue to monitor the situation very carefully.
What and who, sir, is at the ready if things do escalate?
Well, you have police at every level of government. So you'll have the RCMP, you have the local police of jurisdiction, the Ottawa Police Service. Of course, the Sergeant at Arms is responsible for security on the Hill. There are other security partners within the broader public safety community that provide intelligence. So there's a lot of constant communication and coordination. And I know that, over the course of the past number of days, a lot of work, a lot of energy has been put in to being ready to respond to a variety of scenarios. But I do want to underline that, of course, the government and elected officials do not direct those decisions. They're taken independently by very trained expert officials. And so they're going to be at the ready.
Certainly. You are the Minister of Public Safety, though, so we do want to ask you these questions. This is far more, sir, than an inconvenience for people. There's major infrastructure in and around this city. Just talking to folks here, I'm just a visitor, but shops are being told to close. People are being told to stay home. The House resumes, as you know, next week. So at what point does it go beyond, people being allowed to protest? At what point do you order the scene cleared?
You're absolutely right. And I think that, we have already seen, as I said, some expressions which fall very much into the category of extremism, the flying of Confederate flags, some of the placards that are calling for the overthrow of the government through violence. And so we have to put our trust in the trained professionals that work within law enforcement, that work within the intelligence community to draw those boundaries. I'll also just say that there has been advanced communication by, for example, the Ottawa Police Chief. I know Chief Slowly has encouraged residents to stay away from downtown. The Sergeant at Arms, who is responsible for security on the Hill, has put out a communique to parliamentarians and staff. And, public safety is a paramount objective. So we're going to continue to watch the situation very closely and respond as required.
And we hope to speak to Chief Slowly on the program today. But in terms of, we've heard references to potential outside actors. Who could these outside actors be? Where might they be from?
Well, again, I would certainly direct those questions to law enforcement, who are best positioned to answer and to take decisions. But again, I know that that police services and other partners within the public safety community are putting all eyes on the situation, putting additional resources into the area to make sure that there can be peaceful protest, as well as providing direction and guidance to residents so that everybody can stay safe.
I do ask that because, given Canada's support of Ukraine in this current crisis with Russia, I don't know if it's far-fetched to ask, but there is concern that Russian actors could be continuing to fuel things as this protest grows, but perhaps even instigating it from the outset.
Well, again, I'm going to defer to our partners in the public safety, the trained officials and experts in that area. What I can tell you is that we do have the police resources on site right now who are watching the conduct of this convoy very carefully and who are providing direction and guidance to residents to ensure that there is a peaceful protest, but at the same time, providing direction and guidance to residents. And obviously, it's important that Parliament continue to function. It's important that we provide essential services to Canadians and those in the area, and all of that will continue on the strength of the advice that we're getting from police and other partners in the public safety apparatus.
I certainly understand the need or the interest in deferring the question to others who are involved, but I have to assume that you are being briefed on these concerns and on these issues. So what kind of conversations are happening about the kinds of things that I just asked about?
Yes, we're being briefed, and we're obviously looking very closely at what are the underlying motivations that we've seen from some of the organizers, and what we see, what is known, what is readily available, sadly on open circuit, are the kinds of extremist fringe views which are rejected by the vast majority of Canadians. The deliberate and wanton spread of lies around vaccines, the deliberate undermining of healthcare workers who are providing essential services and support to Canadians throughout this pandemic, and frankly, the marginalizing of the work that you and many of your colleagues do in the media. And those are things that are of concern, but I think that we can all rest assured the vast majority of Canadians reject that. And so this is not a convoy that is about freedom. If we want a gateway to freedom and getting back to normal, we need to continue to get vaccinated. That debate has been had and is settled. It's been settled by evidence and science and data, and we'll continue to follow that in order to get there.
You mentioned the concerns and the message about continuing to push for vaccination, but there are people with concerns. Yes, they may be in the minority, particularly when it comes to truckers. We've mentioned that truckers in the industry are about 90% vaccinated, is what we're hearing from the industry. But what about those with real concerns about what is happening with the pandemic and vaccines? Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, as you know, he says he has pitched some alternatives, several of them, talking about rapid testing for truckers, vaccine education for truckers, and clinics along trucking routes, and also helping truckers switch to domestic routes if they can't go across the border because they don't want to get vaccinated. Are those viable options?
Well, look, I'll come back to what I said at the top, which is that there is a distinction between having a reasonable and robust debate about public health care measures and some of the examples of flagrant extremism that we are seeing from many of the leaders of this convoy. And I think, look, Canadians would be right to express some concern of anybody who engages with those leaders, because that kind of expression, like the showing of a Confederate flag,
You've mentioned those examples. You've mentioned those examples, and I don't dispute the concerns at all. Trust me, there are concerns there, but I just want to make sure for the people who are not connected to those groups, whether they're watching at home or watch this later online, how do you bridge that divide or clear up the disconnect that there clearly is? Do you think your government has done enough to answer those questions and concerns? Because clearly something is bubbling up, or there's some point of weakness where some actors can gain access to people's hearts and minds, if I can put it that way. So has your government done enough to make sure Canadians understand what is happening?
The way you bridge that divide is by understanding where the divide is between free speech and other conduct, which falls into the incitement of hatred and violence. And my point simply is that the leaders of this convoy are not really inviting discourse or free speech when they readily demonstrate that they're not interested in a debate. They're interested in taking up the false spread of disinformation. And so, yes, of course, the government will always be accessible and will always be interested in having a very robust discourse about the types of public health care measures that we put into place. And of course, the record is replete with examples of that throughout the course of the pandemic. And the result of that discourse has been that we have seen the vast majority of Canadians take up vaccinations. Truckers have taken up vaccinations because they protect us, they're safe, and they're the most effective and efficient way for us to get back to normal. And that will continue to be the hallmark of this government going forward.
I really appreciate your time, Minister Mendicino. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.